You guys are tuned in to what is going to be our second annual Star Wars episode. And before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and say this, and you're going to hear this a bunch of times throughout the episode. Spoiler alert, if you have not seen Rogue One yet, please stop the podcast, get off of your ass, and go to the movie theater. Unless it's like 6 months from now, go to the video store. We're going to be filling this episode with spoilers. So spoiler alert. But we are talking about Rogue One, a Star Wars story that just opened up a couple of days ago that we were going to go see together, but we ended up seeing it separately. But we've both seen it, and we both have a lot to say about it, I think. So,
now, how many times have you seen it?
Just twice. So I saw it.
Okay.
Well, this is the thing that happens a lot nowadays. I saw it on opening day, which was the day before it officially opened. Whatever they call that now, a sneak preview or whatever, special preview when they show stuff the night before. So me and my wife went and saw it last Thursday night, and then I saw it again on Saturday morning. So, I mean, you've just seen it the one time, correct?
Yeah, I just saw it once. We're both Star Wars fans, lifelong fans. I guess just a little background with Star Wars. I don't know if we did this with The Force Awakens when we reviewed that one, but I mean, I can't remember life without Star Wars. I mean, I was like kind of born into it. I don't know about you, but I mean, I remember my earliest memories of were playing Star Wars, with Star Wars action figures, and I guess watching the movies on TV. And I remember seeing even Empire Strikes Back in the theater when I was 3, which is really weird that I actually have that memory, but I do. And then seeing Return of the Jedi when I was 6, I remember that as well. But again, like, I just remember it being like completely my whole early years, childhood, whatever, completely enamored with Star Wars. When the prequels came back in like the late 90s, 99, Phantom Menace came out, I was super, super excited. It was, I graduated high school already, and I was kind of out on my own, and then all of a sudden a new Star Wars movie came out. I just remember that time period was extremely exciting. Saw all the prequels. My kids were really into the prequels, and many years later, finally The Force Awakens comes out, and I totally, absolutely love that movie. And actually, it's probably one of my favorite of the entire saga, which is kind of crazy, I think, just because it's so new, and I'm usually kind of not that keen on newer films. But
what? Are you sure?
Unless John Carpenter's involved somehow. Anyhow, I absolutely love it. Now, going into this one, it's kind of funny because the Skywalker storyline, of the saga films, the trilogy films, is kind of where it's at for me. And I don't know about you, but I was never into the books or any of the expanded universe stuff, or the video games that, stretched the story into new directions, and none of that appealed to me. What are your thoughts on the EU?
Yeah, I've read some of the books. I mean, I have some of them actually probably scattered around the house. I played some of the video games and stuff. I remember, well, when the prequels were a huge thing, and there was that kind of spin-off at the time when they were making all those toys and stuff, and there was that book that came out. What was it called? Shadows of the Empire or something like that?
Yep.
That was supposed to be between, what was it? That was between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, or?
Yeah, I believe so. No, I think it was Empire in Return.
Yeah. So, I read that book, and I thought that was a really cool story. Yeah, I'm the same way, too, was with the movies. I remember being a real little kid. We had a house fire, and I was maybe in preschool. Maybe I wasn't even in preschool. I don't remember. But I remember being a really little kid, and we went and moved in with my grandparents. I was on this, trundle bed thing that was in a hallway, was where I was sleeping at. And I remember I had all of my toys that weren't destroyed in the fire, in this box under the bed. And I always remember, for some odd reason, like you had said, I don't know why I remember this, but I remember always having stormtroopers and, a Darth Vader or something in that box.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then I remember seeing Return of the Jedi on the big screen. Actually, probably, I think it was at the Dunes Theater in Zion, Illinois.
Oh, really? Okay.
When I was, whatever that would have been, first grade, I guess, or something like that.
Yeah, I saw Empire at the Dunes, and I'm pretty sure I saw Return of the Jedi at the Lakehurst Theater. I don't know if you remember that one.
It's always been part of my life in some way, shape, or form. You know, it's funny when you talk about the prequels. I remember when the prequels first came out, being super excited, and I remember actually going and seeing episode 1, oh man, probably 4, 5, 6 times in the movie theater, and just being like, oh, this is awesome. And then what happened with a lot of people at the time, you know, a year or so went by, and saw it again when it came out on video or whatever it came out on, because I don't think it came out on DVD for a long time.
Yeah, it came out on VHS, and Lucas was against DVD for whatever reason, and I think he was planning on, I don't know, supporting some other medium at the time that was kind of competing with DVD, and then he ended up just giving in and released it on DVD.
But I remember when it first came out and watching it and being like, oh, this isn't all that great. And then episode 2 came out, and I will say of the original, or not of the originals, but of the prequels, episode 2 is my favorite. And if I have to watch one of those, that would be the one I would watch, mainly for the Natalie Portman being tied to a post in the arena scene. But
yeah, I'd go with Revenge of the Sith.
I've actually only seen that movie one time.
Really?
Yep. And it's kind of funny. It goes back to what I was just talking about earlier with whatever they're calling that now. Because now what happens a lot of times when movies come out, you know, they're like, oh, it comes out on December 16th. And then every theater's like, oh, we're going to have a special showing the night before. Like our movie theater showed it the night before at 7. And then they had another showing at 8. So they had 2 of them going on at the same time. But I remember when Revenge of the Sith came out, I went the night before, but it was at midnight, the morning of. So, you know, it was like playing at 12:01 or whatever. And I remember when that came out, that was, you know, that was like a huge deal because that was, I mean, it wasn't the first movie to do that, but that was kind of like when that was starting to become a big thing. I was in my mid-20s when that came out, and man, that beat me up. The next day I was just, you know, spent because I was up till whatever, 3 o'clock in the morning because I was watching this movie all night and then had to be at work the next morning like at 7 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
And just dragging my ass all day.
Sure.
That's the only time I've ever seen that movie.
Really? That's funny. You should. Didn't I give you a copy of it?
I do have. Yeah, I have all 6 of the originals on DVD. I think I got all 6 of them from you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you have to check it out and tell me what you think of it again.
Yeah, it's no. I mean, like I said, episode 1. I don't think I would watch that movie ever again unless I absolutely had to. But yeah, for whatever reason, episode 3, I've never seen it since then. And I think part of that was because of what we were just talking about, because George Lucas was holding off on DVDs forever. And so by the time that came out, VHS was kind of a dying breed. So even when it came out on video, I didn't really have a way to watch it, you know, because I didn't have a VCR at the time. So
yeah, my kids were really big on episode 2 and 3, just because of the clone thing, the clones and all of that, everything that they, you know, were about were really big for kids back then. I don't think I realized how much of a big deal they had, you know, influence they had with the kids, because my kids now they're older, you know, one's in high school, one's in 8th grade. Their movies were the prequels, and they always talk about the clones and how cool the clones were, and you know, that was their thing. So I watched those, the last 2 especially, over and over and over again, just because they were so into them.
So now, did you go see episode 1 when it was released in 3D before the Disney purchase?
No, I did not. No, I didn't. I saw all three of the movies multiple times in the theater when they were released, but no, I did not go back and watch them again when they were re-released in 3D. I know that they were going to do all of them, but it seems like they stopped after the first one.
Well, that's when the Disney purchase took place.
Oh, okay. So that makes sense.
Yes. Episode 1 came out. That was the last time I think I've seen episode 1 was I went and saw it in 3D. And I kind of thought the 3D was kind of cool. But again, the movie was kind of crappy. So, but as far as Rogue One goes, I don't think we had this discussion on the podcast before. I know we've talked about this before between just the two of us. So when they started first showing the previews for Rogue One earlier this year, I think it's safe to say that both of us kind of had the same reaction to it, where there was a lot of people out there that were like, holy shit, there's another Star Wars movie, it's going to be awesome, this and that. And me and you both were kind of like, I'll probably go see it. It's not really doing anything for me.
I was pretty underwhelmed with the concept of it. I mean, and not because I didn't think it was going to be a decent movie. Again, it goes back to the whole expanded universe concept of all these different characters that kind of go outside of the Skywalker story. You know, growing up again, like having Star Wars be like kind of a thing that's always been around. Luke Skywalker was like my first, my first hero, kind of like my first John Wayne, I guess you would say. He was like, that, oh my gosh, I want to be Luke Skywalker when I grow up kind of character. So the Force Awakens was especially, appealing to me just because I hadn't seen, the original trilogy characters on screen since Jedi. So having Luke in that and Han and Leia, but, even as brief as the Luke scene was, I mean, it just kind of had so much emotional appeal to me. So that story, that saga of those characters, I've always been really, really into and excited. And even with the prequels, just, the backstory of Vader and all of that. But I think with these expanded universe films, I was a little bit, I don't know if I'd say skeptical. I guess I would say uninterested, just because I knew that the characters were going to be people I don't know, and the environment would be the same, and there'd be monsters that were the same, and ships and this and that and everything. And so I guess that's why I was sort of underwhelmed with the idea. Not that I thought it would be a bad movie. It's just that, I thought it was going to be kind of like grabbing a book and, reading about the adventures outside of the movies that, with characters that, were never part of what I saw Star Wars to be. And that's kind of, and really that, that's kind of the whole idea of these films and of these kind of spin-off films that they're doing to some degree. So that's, I went in very yeah, okay. But then the reviews started coming in the last week and everybody was going nuts about it. And at that point I was like, well, I definitely got to check this out.
So my turning point was me and my wife went and saw Arrival a couple of, I don't know, maybe a month ago, I guess. And there was a trailer for Rogue One before Arrival. There was something about seeing that trailer on the big screen that I was like, okay, now I gotta see it for sure. Because I was kind of that same way, doesn't really seem like it's going to be a Star Wars movie. And then, our little theater here in town, it's $4 a ticket. And they were having a couple of shows last Thursday, so I got tickets for us to go, and so we went. And I will say that when the movie started, and probably a good 15, 20 minutes into the movie, it didn't feel like a Star Wars movie to me. I don't know what it necessarily felt like, but it didn't really feel like a Star Wars movie. And then there was a point where it all of a sudden just started kind of feeling like a Star Wars movie, which I thought was pretty cool. But it was the one thing that I had said to somebody else was, at first it kind of had that feeling of somebody says, hey, we're going to go see this James Bond movie. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, but James Bond isn't in it. It's Secret Agent 004 instead.
Yeah.
So, it's like the same premise, but a little bit different. Like I said, I don't know exactly when the turning point was, but man, once it turned, and then by the end of the film, I was like I texted you, I think, as the credits were rolling, you got to check it out, man. It's freaking great.
Yeah, you really liked it. I could tell.
And then it was one of those things too, because we had plans to go see it, me and you did, and it was funny because we went on Thursday night, and then we were planning on going to see it on Saturday, but then this big storm rolled through and some stuff. So then we canceled out on Saturday. If we wouldn't have had those initial plans, I probably even would have went and saw it again right away on Friday. Like I was like, oh man, I got to see it again. And I will say that when I did go see it again on Saturday, and I'm glad that I went and saw it right away again, but that initial shock factor of it being so great, which I know is partially due because I was anticipating that I wasn't going to like it. But that initial, like, oh man, this is so freaking awesome, that kind of wore off after the second time I saw it. But I will still say that it is a really good movie. So like I said before, like if you guys haven't seen it yet, we haven't gotten to any spoilers yet, so you're still okay so far. But turn the podcast off and go watch it, and then come back and listen to it.
Yeah, we'll get into the spoilers now. But I think, the story's basically right. It's all the events that lead right up into A New Hope, which I thought was really cool. And one thing I kept reading in the reviews is everybody saying, "Oh wow, it makes A New Hope that much better of a film," because one of the big things they talk about is the Death Star, and how one of those things that everybody always asks is, well, why did they make the Death Star so easy to blow up? Why would they put something so basic, like all you have to do is shoot something into this whatever it was, and and then would blow it up. And then you find out the storyline is that the main character's father worked for the Imperial Army as like a scientist, and he helped construct it, and he created it like that on purpose so that it could be destroyed, which I thought was a really kind of cool way of doing that story wise. It's kind of interesting that they went with the female thing again, because it very much reminded me of like going with like what they did with The Force Awakens with Rey, the main character being female. So I was kind of skeptical about that at first, to be honest with you, just because I thought that we already had Rey, we didn't need to go down that road again, and it just seemed like it was repeating. But I thought that she was, for the most part, pretty interesting character. The Rebels, it was kind of funny because when the movie started, like you said, it didn't feel like a Star Wars movie completely. But then you see stormtroopers pretty quickly, and then I was like, okay, this is definitely a Star Wars movie. The homeland they show where, when she's a little girl and her parents, and it's kind of very similar to Tatooine with, it looked like the moisture farm from where where he was raised. And so kind of had that thing going on for it. The thing about this movie I was sort of expecting was that the characters were going to be very different than, it wasn't going to be characters that we're familiar with, and, there wasn't going to be Skywalkers. Obi-Wan wasn't going to be in there, and all of this. So I think they had to sell those characters to us in a way that that worked. You were invested in them. And I think overall they did a good job with it. The Jin character, I did kind of, I got into her. I wasn't as into her as I was with Rey, but enough so to carry the story. But again, I think this movie had a very expanded universe type feel to it. It felt kind of like a fan movie in that sense, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are like kind of saying like, well, if George Lucas isn't involved, it's not a real Star Wars movie. And I don't agree with that at all. I guess this movie did definitely feel like more of a fan movie than like part of like what would be like the Star Wars storyline. And again, it's not part of the saga per se. So So, it is like a separate story, but it kind of felt like what probably some of those books that I never read. This was probably a lot like the feel of them.
I know that I was reading some stuff the other day and was watching some YouTube videos because one of the things that happened after Disney bought Lucasfilms was they stepped in and said, expanded universe is dead, except for certain things. 30 years or 40 years or whatever it is of all these books and all this other stuff, all garbage.
Yeah.
None of that's canon anymore. Two of the shows that are on, I don't know if they're both on Cartoon Network or what or not, but one of them is that Clone Wars cartoon that was on for a while. And then there's the one that's currently on now, which I haven't seen at all, and I want to start checking it out. It's the Star Wars Rebels cartoon. Supposedly, there's some references to things that are in those cartoons in this movie. And I guess like one of the most obvious ones is there's like some ship or something from Rebels that's in the movie. Like you can see it in one of the battle scenes, I guess.
Yeah. So they basically wiped out all of the expanded universe stuff prior to this acquisition by Disney. So it's like, everything that came after Return of the Jedi, all the books, and supposedly there's like a trilogy of books that people really love that kind of tell the story of what happened to Luke and Leia and Han, and their children and all that stuff in a trilogy format. And I've never read those books, and I don't know what the storylines are, so I was never attached to them.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that like that out there. And that was one of the things, too, with some of the books. I haven't read nearly all the books by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of the books, it's kind of funny because some of them are based for, like, younger readers. Some are based for, like, young adults. And then there was one that I was reading that was geared more towards adults. But I actually stopped reading it because it was throwing me off because it was a Star Wars book, but there was a bunch of swear words in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was really weird, like, hearing these people, like, talk and, like, well, God damn it, and shit, and ass, and fuck this, and fuck that. And I was like, what? This is, I mean, not that I'm offended by any of that, but I was just kind of like, what? This is not a Star Wars story? That's weird. I just couldn't get past it, so I stopped reading it like 100 pages in or something. Probably not even that far into it.
Is it a newer book or an older book?
It wasn't that awful long ago. It was just a couple years ago.
Okay.
But I'll tell you the one thing at the very beginning of the movie that I noticed immediately that kind of did take that Star Wars feel away from it was there was no title crawl.
I didn't mind that. Because I expected that because I kept reading everything I read was.
Yeah, I didn't. Because that's the thing, like, that I've said before on this show is I love to be spoiler free going into stuff. So even the fact that I knew that this was right before, I didn't even know it was right before A New Hope for the longest time. And then like 2 months ago, I found out inadvertently it's like right before A New Hope. And I was like, God damn it. So I didn't know like any, because I watched a video after I saw it that came out like the week before, and it was like stuff you need to know about Rogue One, and that was one of the things, like there's no title crawl, and I was like, oh, well, evidently they didn't keep that a secret.
Yeah, I didn't mind that so much. I knew it wasn't going to be there just because I had read some spoilers. And it just being that it's not part of the official saga per se, I thought that was, okay, well, they're doing it a little different. That's kind of neat. So I didn't have a problem with that part. Overall, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was a good movie, but definitely, probably the best movie to compare it to would be The Force Awakens, just because, that this is the second Disney movie. And I will say that I probably, by a pretty big margin, I enjoyed The Force Awakens more so than this movie. And that doesn't say that I don't like this movie. I do like this movie quite a bit, but I think The Force Awakens was the better of the two. maybe it's because it's the saga and it carries that story, and it was, I don't know. There's Jedis and all that lightsaber fights, because that's one thing about this movie. There's really no lightsaber fights except for the, the end thing with Darth Vader. The characters in this movie didn't have quite the punch that, like what we're going to find out what happens with Rey and Finn, and and then obviously the original trilogy characters, seeing what happens with Luke in episode 8. I'm really excited about that. So that movie was of the two. I would lean towards The Force Awakens as being the better of the two so far. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm still a little bit on the fence with that one. I don't know.
Okay.
I'd probably have to see it again.
Force Awakens, I could watch multiple times. This one, like, I saw once, and I'll definitely see it again, I'm sure. I don't have that driving force to go see it again like I did with The Force Awakens. Like, I got to see that again.
Oh, so yeah, I had that Thursday and Friday for sure.
Okay.
But now that I've seen it again, that's kind of died off. So I don't know if I'll see it again at the theaters or not. Which is kind of funny because that's the only movies that I ever do that with is with Star Wars movies. I don't ever do that with anything else. I mean, granted, there's tons of movies that I have on video that I'll watch over and over again. But a couple of things that I did want to make sure that we did touch on, and again, this goes back to some of the stuff after I read it, and you guys know me at all after listening to the show for couple of years now. And anybody that knows me personally knows that I'm a bit of an asshole sometimes. So even though I really like this movie, I do have to pick on it a little bit. So there was a few things with the movie that I didn't like. And I think some of these are actually going to be a little bit unpopular with some people. The first one being, which is one of the scenes that I've seen a lot of chatter online about since I've seen the movie, and I've seen more than one commentary about how this should win Best Special Effects for the CGI work that was done in the movie, and that is the CGI work that was done to bring some of the old characters back to life from some of the original movies, and mainly that was Grand Moff Tarkin, who is the biggest one. That scene when they revealed him, Critic walks in and you see the back of him, and right at, like, sitting there, and I'm kind of like nudging my wife a little bit. I'm like, it's Tarkin! There's Tarkin! I was thinking, and before he even turned around, because I hadn't read anything before that, I wonder who they got to play him. Is what I was thinking. Like, oh, they got somebody to play him. And he turned around, and I was like, oh my God, it's Tarkin. That's cool. And then they kept showing him throughout the movie. And the more he was on screen, the more cartoonish it looked to me. And I don't know if that was because I knew it wasn't him and it was CGI'd, or if it was actually just not that great CGI, or if it's just because we're so goddamn picky about CGI. I don't know what the reasoning was.
I think the technology isn't completely there, especially a human being that we know what he looks like and everything, and recreate him with a computer and put him and insert him into a film. I mean, it was kind of Polar Express-ish, kind of had that feel to it.
Exactly.
The way he moved a little, and I mean, you just knew it wasn't real, and I think it did kind of pull you out of the movie a little bit, So
I wish what they would have done with that, if they were going to insist on showing him at all, was they would have showed him briefly at that very first reveal, and then had him turn around, and if they're going to insist on him being in the rest of the movie, kind of do what they were kind of doing in some of those scenes where you had his back towards the camera, but then you had his reflection off of the glass. Like, I thought that would have been a little bit more effective. Or maybe kind of showing him from the side a little bit. It just kind of took a little bit away from it.
So that was a little distracting. It was cool, but it was distracting at the same time.
Because I know like they did that same kind of thing with some of the pilots in some of the scenes, and then some of the other scenes were recycled footage from back in the day, which was cool. But as soon as they showed Tarkin, it was kind of funny because as soon as he came on screen, I was like, Leia's going to be at the end of the movie. She's going to be at the end of the movie. I know she's going to be at the end of the movie. And that was the other thing that I didn't like about the movie was the fact that after it got going, everything was so predictable to me. And I hate to rip on it for this, and I don't know if it's just from being a Star Wars fan forever and seeing A New Hope so many times and stuff. You know, I knew going into it, like, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And one of the things that we had been saying for a long time was, you know, I kept saying, all these people, where are these people at now? They have to die. There's no way that these people don't die. They have to die. They have to there's got to be a massive just exodus at the end of this movie. There's no way around it. So the other thing that I didn't like about the movie, which I know this is probably going to be the most unpopular thing I'm going to say, K2SO or whatever the heck his name is, the droid, didn't like him.
Really?
Not at all.
Yeah, I didn't mind the droid. I thought he was okay. I mean, there's a lot of talk online about how great that droid was.
I know. That's why I said
he's like the best thing in the film, and oh my gosh, and the most developed character. I don't know if I go that far. I didn't mind him. I didn't hate him or anything like that, but I certainly wasn't like, oh my gosh, I got to go out and buy his action figure now.
No.
It's like,
it was funny because when we went and saw it on Thursday, my wife, every time he was on screen, she was just like, just yucking it up and stuff. And then he dies, and she was like tearing up over that. Didn't tear up when anybody else died, but that robot tore her up. And then when I went back on Saturday, there was probably just as many people at the theater as there was on Thursday night. And there was a lady sitting behind me that hopefully doesn't listen to this show, but she was very loud throughout the movie, very pronounced. And every time that stupid droid was on screen, she was just like, oh my God, that is so funny. And I just thought, for me personally, I mean, when C-3PO was sarcastic in every other movie that he's been in, it's okay for him. Let him have the sarcasm. You know, this droid, to me, it just kind of seemed like it was kind of a, like, oh, we're gonna give him some of the sarcasm with R2 or C-3PO, but we're gonna take it up a couple of notches here, and we're just gonna make this guy kind of a jackass.
Yeah, it didn't. It was okay. It was fine for what it was, in my opinion. I was certainly, it wasn't like, oh, this is the greatest character ever in the universe or anything like that. I still think C-3PO's introduction in The Force Awakens was probably one of the best introduction. I mean, I couldn't have written it better myself. Just interrupting the Han and Leia reunion. I just thought that was incredible. That was so like classic C-3PO. So going back to this one, he was okay. Just again, it's sort of the expanded universe thing where it's just sort of like another robot and not quite the characters that we're used to. And with this movie though, and I think you alluded to it, I thought the Leia finale of the film was great. Actually, that to me like kind of made me feel pumped right at the end of the movie. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I knew she was CGI, but they didn't show her nearly as much as Tarkin.
Right.
So he was just like, she was just briefly there, like kind of turns around and says her line, and that's it. So you're kind of like, even my kids were like, how did they make her look so young? I'm like, that's CGI there. That's not a real person. So I thought that was kind of cool.
See, even with her, I kind of wish they wouldn't have shown her. They would have just said, you know, whatever they said here, princess or whatever, and handed it to her. And then kind of like had the guy like talking to her. And then just had her, because all she said was hope. That was all she said. And it just had her, that, you know, that Carrie Fisher's voice come out, and everybody would have probably had the same exact reaction anyway. Like, yeah!
Yeah, it was a really cool ending, I will say.
It was really cool. I didn't realize that it was, up until even going into the movie, I didn't realize it was going to be quite Okay, this movie ends and New Hope begins. Like,
Right.
I didn't realize it was going to be quite that soon.
Yeah, it just takes it right to the end there. Yeah.
And because one of the things I did on Saturday after I got home was I threw in A New Hope and I watched that. And it's actually kind of cool watching the opening crawl for that one, because all the stuff that they say in that crawl just happened, and you're like, oh yeah, cool. It is right, because I mean, we've talked about this with the countless horror sequels that we've done on this show, where they're like, okay, so the story that happened over here, forget that, and we're making a new origin story is what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's not Princess Leia anymore. It's Princess Wanda, and
right. Yeah, exactly. They did a great job of connecting it like very well.
Even like the ships and all that stuff, you're like, oh man, that's the same ship. That's cool. And
oh yeah, and even giving it that feel that like it was right around that time period. They kind of even using modern technology to make it look like it was, the same stuff that they were using back in the 70s or whatever. But I will say my favorite thing, which we haven't touched on at all yet, of this entire movie, by far, was the Darth Vader scenes. Those scenes made this movie for me. If it wasn't for that, I don't know that I would have enjoyed it as much as I did.
So what's funny about him in this movie, which goes back to what we were just saying with making it look like it did in the 70s. I was watching a video the other day when they were talking about them making the mask and the outfit for this new movie. It's the same outfit that he wears in A New Hope, so the cape is over the shoulders and stuff. But they even went as far, and you'll appreciate this because you're a big mask guy, when they were making the helmet and stuff, they even went as far to try to match up the finger and palm imprints in the mold for the mask as that are in the original one. So it looked as close to the original as possible. Even getting the tint of red on the lenses to match up was like super important to him. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool.
That's cool, yeah. Because you could tell that the costume that he uses in that first movie is different than the ones in the later movies. Like, it's just something I mean, it didn't... I know the Empire suit, I mean, it looked shinier or something. This one had a little different kind of tone to it or whatever. I thought that the Vader stuff was just really, really cool. And the one thing, like, I know that the big thing that they were talking about is the Darth Vader castle, which I remember, gosh, back in, like, the late 90s, I got a book, and it, like, was, like, the concept art of Star Wars. And it showed like all the different ideas they had when they were getting ready to film The Empire Strikes Back. And one of those ideas was they had an idea for a castle for Ralph McQuarrie, the guy who basically designed Darth Vader's look and pretty much most of the main characters and the outfits and all of the Star Wars in the Star Wars universe and all those films. He came up with the idea of a castle and having him like live in this castle, and they never used it, and they used it in this movie. And I know everybody was just going nuts about that. And I thought that was really, really cool that they did that, and they just give you just little snippets of Vader too in this movie. And then the back to tank scene, when we first are introduced to Darth Vader, he's out of the suit. He's in that, like, the tank very similar to the thing that Luke's in the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. So he's like in this healing liquid, and then that, and then of course the scene where he kills all the rebels, and that was just pure, like, everything that you ever wanted to see Vader do, but they couldn't do back in the old days, So that was really cool. I have to say, like, every time he was on screen, and one thing too that, like, I've been reading a lot of people are like complaining about was he uses a pun, kind of like a Arnold Schwarzenegger type pun, like. Yeah, and I thought it was cool. I thought it was great. It's when he's choking the guy, and I thought, like, that was excellent. I thought that was like one of the best scenes in the whole movie.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought about that scene towards the end, because I've been reading some mixed reviews on that march down the hallway in the ship when he's just kind of off and off the rebel soldiers or whatever they are. one by one.
Oh yeah,
There's a lot of people
it.
that were like, "Oh, that's too intense for Vader at the time," and this and that. I thought it was pretty cool too. Honestly, though, I almost kind of wish they would have left the lightsaber off for that
really?
scene. And then what they could have done, again, this kind of goes back to not having, some of the more recognizable characters on screen so much, but just to kind of give people that, oh, there it is, feeling is, so you have this guy that's, he has the disc and the door won't open all the way and he's trying to get it out, hand it off to somebody on the other side of the door. But when Vader got up to the door where he was at, you could have just had that sound, the sound, and then like a red glow from that side of the door, but never actually see it. And I think that would have been like a cool thing to do too. Just because, you made it that far without a lightsaber battle, so just seeing a lightsaber, it's kind of like, eh.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't mind. I thought it was actually really cool.
Yeah, it would have been one of those like a good teaser.
Actually, this movie actually made me think that how cool it would be to get a Darth Vader movie, like a standalone Darth Vader film. Something about what's going on after Revenge of the Sith. Maybe not, obviously not this close to A New Hope, but somewhere between maybe Revenge of the Sith and this movie, and just kind of seeing what he was up to and what he was doing and all that. I think that'd be really cool. Because every time he was on screen, I was just captivated. It was that was really, really cool. That character is like so iconic. He's like just the suit, the voice, and all of it. And I liked what they did too. It's kind of funny because that scene in the back to tank where he's out of his costume and you only get like a really brief glimpse of him. Now I knew that there was going to be a scene like that, and people were like analyzing the trailer, and they show it real briefly, but people were kind of creating their own version of what he looked like in the back to tank, and they kind of put him in there like the way he looked in Revenge of the Sith right after he was damaged, and so he had no legs and no arms and all that, and floating in that tank and all that. And there are all kinds of pictures online of that. I was kind of expecting like a very graphic scene there, like you'd see like this, basically Vader just being a torso floating in there. And then the way they actually did it kind of surprised me, where they really hold back and they only give you like kind of a brief look at him, but you don't even really see much. You just kind of see like the water go down, and then he's in there and he's got the breathing apparatus on his face, and then you kind of you can see that he's bald and he's wounded, but you don't see the the limbs missing like I had kind of.
See, I noticed his arms were missing.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to watch it again.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was, when they first walked in, I was wondering, I'm like, are they even going to show him at all, or is it going to be? And then I'm like, oh, it was the second viewing that I noticed his arms were stumps.
I'll have to watch it again, yeah, because I kind of sort of know, like I saw like it's very quick though, right? It's like,
oh yeah, it's really quick.
It's not like they like really linger on it or any, and it's kind of cool that they did it that way because it made it more mysterious, not to show you too much, so that you kind of in your mind kind of comes up with what you remember him looking like, and what he's like. So that was kind of cool.
I was half waiting for him to like make his face look like the actor who played him in the prequels. I was like, I wonder if it's going to be the same guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad they did.
It's kind of funny because there were a couple of reoccurring characters from the prequels in this movie.
Yeah, there were.
And a couple of that were played by the same actors and actresses, as a matter of fact, which I thought was kind of cool. I was actually a little bit surprised that they actually did that. And again, if you read some of the spoilers beforehand, like it was pretty known that the guy who played Bail Organa was in it. The lady who played Mon was back in it. It wasn't a surprise that she was back in it because they show her in I think all the trailers actually. And seeing C-3PO and R2-D2 in the movie were not surprising at all, because I think those are the only characters that have been in all of the movies now. But I thought that was kind of cool. And this one being the first kind of spin-off of Star Wars, this is one of the things that I'm I'm hoping doesn't happen. The stuff I keep reading now is that they're going to limit these to one movie a year, and hopefully that's not too much. I really, really am hoping that they don't take the Marvel route on these Star Wars movies, and we're not all of a sudden getting a Star Wars movie every 3 months. The one thing that I do kind of hope, which I know this is something that you were kind of saying was a little bit of a turnoff for you with this movie, but is I do kind of wouldn't mind seeing in the future, if you're going to have a spin-off Star Wars movie, to have it to be a spin-off movie and get away from being reliant on some of the most recognizable characters of the franchise being in the movie. One of the things that I would like to see is the blind guy that was in this movie. I would love to see a movie about him, whatever, 15, 20 years before this movie. You know, maybe before he went blind, to see where he got some of his force awareness or whatever you want to call it from.
Sure.
Some of his walking stick abilities that when he was whipping that thing around. Because that was one of the things with this movie was there was a lot of, you know, there was people from the prequels, there was definitely people from the original trilogy, and then there was a lot of references to, you know, other things as well. So you saw a lot of those, even some of the little stuff, like you had that one scene where they're in the city and they bump into those two characters from the bar.
Yeah, right.
You know, and you're like, oh, hey, those are the two guys, and the one guy gets his arm cut off. Cool. I would like to see them, like, kind of go in that direction. Even though this was not a Skywalker story, you still had Princess Leia and you still had Darth Vader in it. To go back to the Marvel movies, Iron Man doesn't need to be in every movie. So I
hear what you're saying.
I would like to see that at some point. And granted, like I said, I know this is the first one, and they're kind of just testing the waters with it. Another thing too with this movie that I thought was really cool. This is the first movie that you really had kind of a different angle of the rebels than you have in the other movies. You know, this movie really kind of sheds some light that some of these rebels really aren't good guys at all. I mean, they're downright ruthless and evil, if you will.
Yeah, that was a big deal on this movie. Yeah, I know a lot of people were talking about that, how it kind of got people to see that the rebellion was a lot more complicated than the way that it's depicted in A New Hope.
Right, and I think that also gave it a little bit more of a grown-up feel.
Sure.
To the movie, and I know this one was rated PG-13. The other thing that I'm not sure if I really liked it or not was, which is kind of weird to say with some of the other Star Wars movies, but this one had more of a battle feel to it, or almost like a war type feel to it.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, it felt like almost like a World War II movie.
Right. Yeah, and I know that I watched an interview with the director of the movie the other day, and he, like you had said, you know, he is obviously a fanboy. This was actually, oddly enough, this is only his third movie, which I thought was kind of odd. Gareth Edwards, he was talking about the beach battle scene, and he had said when he was a kid and he remembers watching the Hoth battle scene, he's like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, you know, I used to always think that scene was like a half hour long, and in reality it's like 90 seconds long. So when I made this movie, you know, he's like, I wanted that proper battle scene. I don't think I necessarily minded it. It was just kind of odd because, you know, you're watching this scene and it's just kind of going on and on and on.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that it just didn't really feel Star Wars to me. So that was a little weird, but like I said, I don't think I necessarily minded it. It was just something I noticed about the movie that was a little different. I really did like the movie, the Jyn Erso character. I don't think I liked her as much as I did like Rey, but I did like her. I wonder if, like, in the future, you know, if they'll be like, oh, maybe we should make another Jyn Erso movie and we'll do like a prequel to Rogue One and we'll do a movie about the, when she was 16 or something. I don't know. I wonder if what'd come of that.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of Star Wars movies. I think that we know that now with the box office of this and Force Awakens and Disney being at the helm. We can expect a lot more being produced, which is kind of funny because it's really weird because I remember very, very well in like 1984, 85. Return of the Jedi was 83. Around 85, I would say, I remember I was done with Star Wars at that time. I was like, I can't, I'm done. I'm like, I've lived it. It was my whole childhood. And now I mean, obviously I'm still a kid, but I remember that point, like thinking it's like, I couldn't like handle, I just didn't care anymore. And that was like, for us vintage collectors, that was when 1984, 85 was when the Power of the Force line came out of action figures, which was like the final line of vintage figures. And nobody bought them because nobody cared and there was no movie to back them up. They were just kind of movie figures from all three of the original trilogy movie. And now they're worth a ton of money because nobody cared back then. And so there were less of them circulated. I remember like that period of time when you would go into like Kmart or whatever and everything Star Wars was in like the clearance bin. And I just remember like my mom like saying, "Oh, do you want this?" I'm like, "No, I can't. I just don't care about it anymore." My whole life had been Star Wars and it's time to move on to something new. Right when I graduated high school, it was like that the bug started to bite me again. I was like, Star Wars I remember that. That was pretty cool. And that's right when they started to bring everything back. It was really exciting because it was like, wow, this is all coming back. Now we're in a place in history where, there's not going to be this big giant gap between movies. Even saga movies, are going to be, they're going to be pumping these things. Yeah, they're just going to be pumping them out and then movies in between. And, so we're just going to get an enormous amount of Star Wars product coming out. And it's kind of cool because it's never been like this before. Because, with Lucas at the helm, he kind of ended it with the original trilogy and then took a long time before he came back with the prequels. And then even that, he kind of did it sparingly. And now it's like we're in a very interesting place.
That's my only concern with them doing these every year is because I know they're talking about doing a Han Solo movie, and then you hear rumors of they're going to do like a Boba Fett movie and stuff. I really wish if they were going to, instead of doing all these origin story movies, we get a saga movie every other year, and then the year in between, just do some spin-off movie. I mean,
yeah.
Because I'll tell you right now, I guarantee you when that Han Solo movie comes out, there are going to be so many people that are like, that's not Harrison Ford.
Oh, yeah.
Unless they do something stupid in CG. That would be horrible.
That would be terrible.
CGI Harrison Ford the entire movie.
I can't picture them doing that. I guess you never know now, though, but...
Well, they did... what the hell? Oh, it was when they did the last Tron movie.
Oh, yeah, they did a lot of that stuff then,
CGI'd, what's his face, is the dude's character from back in,
you're right.
1984 or whatever, onto some dude. I don't remember if it was really bad or not. I don't remember if I liked that movie now. I know I saw it, but... Well,
I do recall that from what I've heard about this new Han Solo movie, that Han Solo has been cast, and it's a different actor.
Yeah,
so it doesn't look like they're going to go that road. So that'll be interesting.
So another Star Wars tidbit, since we were talking about books and stuff earlier. I actually am currently in the middle of reading Carrie Fisher's latest book, which is called The Princess Diaries.
Oh, yeah?
And it is basically about a recollection of when they were making A New Hope back in 1976, which is oddly enough the same year that I was born. And it's a pretty good book so far. I didn't realize that she's written so many books. She's written a lot of books. She's actually written a bunch of like fiction books as well as nonfiction books. But what was it? Postcards from the Edge. She wrote that. I didn't realize she wrote that. But there's a line she's talking about how she's Princess Leia and she's always been Princess Leia, since 76. So, 40 years. And now she's, so much older, and she's still Princess Leia now in the new Star Wars movies. But she's made a couple references in the movie or in the book about people masturbating to her, especially when she was in Return of the Jedi.
Right.
It's just kind of funny.
Oh, that's funny.
I will say, if overall, for the past year, I really hadn't been looking forward to the movie, and then went and saw it a week ago and was blown away. Thumbs up for me, for sure.
Yeah, I'll definitely give this a thumbs up.
I've seen it twice so far. Chances are I'll probably see it again. We're coming up on the holidays here. Christmas is in a couple of days, so I got 4 days off of work this weekend, and then 3 or 4 days off of work next weekend, so I'll probably have to kill a couple hours one of those days. So I'll probably go see it again.
Oh, there you go.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check us out on Instagram and Facebook. We're 4 heads on both of those. Talk to you next week.